Hey everyone, welcome back to the Spruce and Linen channel. I'm Janelle and today is gonna be another weaving experiment. I had this vision of doing a stuffed mushroom to make like a 3D effect. I have no idea if this is gonna work, but we're gonna give it a try. So let's get started. So today I'm going to be using our larger flat pack frame loom in the smaller size. I like to do some of these experiments on a small scale because I would hate to make a huge piece and then have it just not work. So we're gonna test this out on the small scale. Now, this is the loom you guys are used to seeing me use most often in these videos. As you can see with the smaller mode, as I like to call it, on the large loom, it's giving us a little bit of a shorter space, which is what I wanted because like I said, I wanna make this pretty small. So I think for this project, I'm gonna use 8/8 cotton warp string, and I already have a dowel kicking around here somewhere. Crap, where did that dowel go? Hello? I literally just had it. So I have this small dowel that I'm gonna use as a reference to decide how wide this little piece is gonna be. So it's gonna be pretty small. So first I'm gonna put a single warp on my loom a little bit smaller than the dowel that I wanna use. Now I think I wanna hang this on the loops themselves in groupings of 2. So I'm just gonna see if I have groupings of 2. I almost do, so I'll add one more. I have a total of 20 warp strings on my loom. This is a 4 EPI loom, so when it's single warped, meaning there's one string in each notch, it's going to give you 4 warp strings per inch. As you can see, I tied this and my last warp string ended up being really, really loose. So I'm gonna even out the slack. So our warp is going like this. So I'm pulling up on that last warp string and down on the next and then up on the next. And I'm just gonna sort of spread out the slack from that one loose string instead of starting over. Now I'm weaving in a piece of cardstock. This one is about 3 inches wide. I wanna make my piece about this big. So let's measure that. So probably about 5 inches tall, which works out well because it's about 5 inches wide. And then we'll be hanging it directly from the loops at the top. Since I want to do a mushroom, I've picked some colors that I think will go well with a mushroom. So I'm thinking of doing some bright red for the mushroom, off-white for the background, and then I think this beige color for like the stem of the mushroom. But we need something to sort of stuff our mushroom with. And so I think I have some red wool roving that's really similar to this yarn. These are so close to being the same color, so I think that's gonna work perfectly. I'm gonna grab my computer now so I can sort of map out what this weaving is gonna look like and create myself a bit of a pattern. The first thing I'm gonna do is create a 5 inch by 5 inch design so that it's gonna be the same size I want my weaving to end up. I found this mushroom earlier, so I'm just gonna copy and paste that into my 5 inch by 5 inch design. Shrink it down to about where I think looks like it'll fit on the piece nicely, and then just make sure that it's centered. I think I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. And that's looking pretty good there. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to just find a square outline, and I'm gonna put that around the entire design just in black so that I know where my actual weaving is when I put this on a bigger page. So then I'm going to just position this toward the back. I'm going to grab the mushroom as well as the outline and copy that. And then I'm going into a new page that's 8.5 by 11 since that's what I'll be printing on, and I'm just gonna paste that in there. And it should end up the exact right size to be 5 inches in the middle of that page. So I'm gonna download that and print it out, and then we can get started weaving. Now, for whatever reason, when I printed this out, it wasn't perfectly 5 inches, but it was close enough for me to use it, so I just went with it. All right, so now I have my printed page, and like I said, for whatever reason, it didn't go exactly 5 inches, but it kind of looks like that's fine because it's very close to what my weaving is. So the first thing I need to decide, since I'm gonna be weaving bottom up, is I need to decide what I'm doing for the fringe. Do I want to do just cotton string like I have been doing so often lately? Maybe I want to do something different. I need to think about this. Okay, so I've decided I'm just gonna do the cotton string at the bottom. I wanna keep this really simple because again, it is an experiment, and so I don't know for sure how this is gonna turn out, so I don't wanna spend too much time making it super unique at this point. So I'm going to take this Lion Brand Woolies Thick and Quick. I'm going to do a twining stitch and 2 to 3 rows of plain weave. Okay, I've decided 2 rows of plain weave is enough. So I'm gonna weave this back in just a couple of rows, cut off the excess, and we'll tuck in these ends later. Now I'm just gonna add a fringe. I'm going to use 5mm cotton string, and I just need to decide how long I want this fringe. So I literally just picked a length, and I'll measure it for you here. Folded in half, it's 10 inches, so each piece will be 20 inches long, and we're gonna go with that. And I'm gonna cut 10 of those since we have 20 warp strings and we're wrapping around 2 strings at a time. So I'm just using a simple Ryan knot going around 2 strings at a time. I'm gonna match up the ends and then pull that Ryan knot down. Okay, I have all my base work done, and we do have a video for the whole process I just did. I will link it up here for you. Now I'm going to, well, thankfully, this pattern kind of fits perfectly under this part of my loom. So I'm just gonna slip it behind so I can use this as a reference as I go. And I mean, with this kind of shape, something that's like fairly organic, like a mushroom, I don't think it's that important to make the shape itself super perfect to my reference. It's just to give me a guide so that I don't make a shape that looks nothing like the mushroom. So I'm first going to take what's gonna be my background color and grab some of that, and I'm going to weave basically just a few rows of plain weave all the way across until I get to this bottom point of the mushroom stem, you know what I mean. I may or may not be already realizing that my idea might not work, but like I said, this is a bit of an experiment, so we're gonna see what happens. I feel like I basically should have not put on the fringe yet, so I might have to take some of the fringe off in order to do this. I'm switching gears because I'm realizing some of the logistics of what I wanna do isn't gonna work with the fringe on. Oh my goodness, how are we gonna do this? This is what I mean by experiment, because like I said, I've never done this before, so I actually don't even know it's gonna work the way that I want it to. It's gonna be a bit of a workaround, but I'm going to take off the fringe because I still need access to the notches because of the idea that I have. And instead of starting with the white, we're actually gonna just go straight into weaving the actual mushroom. I'm nervous. I'm really unsure about it. So I'm gonna weave the stalk of the mushroom first. I don't need a super long piece. I probably already took too much. We're trying it, we're winging it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but I mean, that's how experiments go, right? This is very similar to our tapestry weaving tutorial, and I will link that one up here as well. Basically where we're just like following a pattern. So we have a bit of a mushroom base here, and I'm gonna cut off this excess. We'll just feed this down to the back. And now we're gonna start weaving the red of the mushroom. In retrospect, I probably should have done this piece by weaving upside down so that the fringe was last, but we've already started, so I don't really want to start completely over. So we're gonna like make it work. But now we're gonna add this red in, and I shouldn't need a ton of that either. I'm so unsure about this. I'm like trying to calculate in my brain how this is gonna go. And I'm just gonna keep weaving and trying to figure it out. But I'm honestly just like a little bit nervous about if it's even gonna work. Now I'm not worrying about the spots on the mushroom, obviously. I'm just doing a solid color mushroom, and then we might add some detail later, but right now I just wanna focus on getting that general mushroom shape and then figuring out how we can make it a stuffed mushroom. Okay, so we have our general mushroom shape. I'm pretty happy with it. It lines up pretty well with the picture I had, so that's great. And I have to think about how we're gonna do this because It's kind of hurting my brain. I think what we're gonna do at this point is we're gonna go to the back and we're gonna tuck in all these ends just because I don't want anything to come loose, and I think it will just be a little bit easier if we don't have these ends floating around. So I think I figured out what the best course of action is to accomplish this how I want to. I think we are gonna go ahead and weave all the white, and then at the very end, I'm gonna take out the cardstock, slide it down, put on the fringe, and just push it all back up. I think that would be the best way to go about it. So I am now going to take the off-white yarn and I'm gonna fill this all in with that, and then we can try the stuffed mushroom portion, but I think I really need that background and structure in there in order to do this. Now this part's gonna be a little bit tricky because I don't have room to sort of create that arch that I typically like to make. Again, I'm not too worried about this section. We'll fix it later. Okay, so now I've reached the top of the mushroom with the white here. I'm going to trim off this tail, and I think I'm just gonna tuck this around here just so it gives that cleaner edge. And then I'm gonna go back and do the other side. So I'm gonna fill this all in and then we'll finish off the top. Now that I'm at the top, I'm just gonna I cut a new piece and I'm gonna do a twining stitch here at the very top. So we have all of this done now. And I think the next step, I'm once again gonna just go in and tuck in all the ends so they're not in the way. So what I wanna try is to basically put another warp on top of this and try to weave the top of the mushroom again and then like stuff it. So we're gonna see if this works at all. I have no idea. So I'm gonna grab my warp string again, and basically I'm gonna go back and warp just the sections that have the mushroom top, and we're just gonna kind of repeat what we've done here. So I need the third one in, and you can see now why I didn't want the fringe on this, because we kind of need the space to work with so that we can get to the notches. Now the parts of the warp string that are currently attached to the actual notches are not gonna stay there. We're going to take them off later, but we need to have them stretched out so we can actually weave on them. I believe, okay, let's count the warp strings of the actual mushroom here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, not quite 15. So we'll go one more. And then I'm gonna tie this off up here. So I have 15 warp strings on. Now we're gonna take another piece of the red yarn. So the very bottom we went around here. I'm gonna start on this left side, and I'm poking my needle from the very back of the piece to the front because we'll need to tuck this back in the very back later. So I'm gonna leave that in there. Then I'm going to just weave on these surface strings, and I'm going to be doing that mushroom shape again by just following what I did previously. So what I was just thinking about was, you know how I just came through all the way from the back to here? I'm wondering if we should do the same thing every time we come around a warp string here, is actually grab, let's see here, grab the below warp string as well. Oh, actually that might just create too much bulk. Okay, we won't do it that way. Okay, so I'm literally just going to try to follow the same lines that I did on the previous mushroom shape. So basically now I have this like basically free floating mushroom top happening here. And my thoughts now are, I think that I need to cut off the bottom part of this secondary warp and feed all of those warp strings into the back and secure them. And then that will sort of create this little pocket that I'm thinking then we can stuff that pocket and then do the same thing on the top where we take the warp strings off and we tuck them back into the back. I'm nervous. I'm very, very nervous because if I cut this off and everything goes to crap, I'm going to be very sad. But we got to rip the Band-Aid off and just give this a go. So very carefully, I have lifted up just this top additional warp that we added. And I'm just gonna very carefully cut it off. Maybe I should do, okay. Let's not go crazy. Let's do 2 strings at a time. So I'm gonna cut 2 off. Okay, that feels a little bit less scary. And I'm going to feed this warp string down through here. So this is the edge of the mushroom and I'm gonna feed it right here where the edge of that part of the mushroom is too. And then this one will go next to it. And then, so yeah, let's do a little test before we go cutting everything off. So then what I'm thinking I'll do is this will get flipped over. I will grab those 2 warp strings and I'm gonna tie them in a knot on the back. Okay, I think that worked totally fine. So we're gonna take the next 2, cut them off, and do the same thing. So I'm gonna feed that warp string. I'm gonna try to line it up to where it goes with this one. This might be either the coolest or the weirdest piece I've ever made. We're gonna hopefully find out. Oh no, what happened here? Oh, it slipped off because I've been cutting the warp strings. So these strings back here, because there's 3 of them, I'm gonna tuck them all in and we'll knot them kind of all together. Now we've created this little pocket in here. So what I wanna do, and it might be better if I sort of tuck in more of the warp strings on the top and just leave a small opening to stuff the wool into. I think that's probably gonna be our best bet. But I'm gonna try to take a chunk of this and just see like what we're working with here. So if I lift up those warp strings and stuff this in, actually we might wanna stuff it first so we're leaving enough room. Do you see what I'm going for here? Can you guys see that? So it's giving it like a bit of a 3D effect. Okay, I think this might be a little bit too much. So let's try. And the reason I'm using red is just in case a little bit is showing through, that it doesn't really matter because it's the same color anyway. So that's kind of in there. I think I'm gonna just start doing what I did at the bottom and see what happens. Because again, experiments, we don't really know until we try it. So maybe on these ones, I don't want to necessarily tie them like super tight. Maybe I have still too much in there because we kind of want to leave like a bit of give in there and we can spread out these weft strings. So just to give you an update on how I'm doing this, when I tuck in 1 warp string, I'm going to go down and through the back. Then I just need to make sure that the next warp string that I'm tucking in is on the other side of the warp string that's still in. So I tucked this, the one I just tucked in is right here. The next one is gonna be right here so that this warp string right here is in between them, making there to be actually something to tie them around. And oh my gosh, I feel like this is looking so cute. Now on the back, I know everyone's least favorite thing is tucking in ends, myself included, but I'm gonna do it because I think it's like you spend so much time weaving a beautiful piece, it almost feels like a shame to finish it off in a way that is not as neat as I want it. That's just me though. Like obviously it's your work, so you can do what you want. But I'm gonna tuck in all these little ends, just doing 2 warp strings at a time because I really want this to be a nice finished piece. Now, I don't think this mushroom is quite complete because I think we need the little white spots. I think that would look better. And I'm gonna do that with needle felting, or at least I'm going to try. Now for this kind of needle felting where I'm going on top of like a woven wall hanging, you don't have to needle felt these like until the end of time. They just need to be enough that they aren't going to be able to just be pulled right off. I'm focusing on the edges just to make sure that they are really getting into the piece here. So now we need to finish the bottom of this, because like I said, like obviously we ended up weaving all of this and doing all this stuff first. And now, just trying to make sure this mushroom shape makes sense. So I'm gonna slide my cardstock. I'm gonna try to stick this down. My tape isn't holding as well anymore. I'm gonna push down this base that we created earlier. Now I'm going to put all my fringe in, and then we're just gonna push it up. This is one of those like make it work projects, and I think that happens a lot when you're experimenting. Okay, so I have everything done. And so now I'm just gonna take my weaving comb and just push this little by little up to meet with my weaving. And now it looks just as it would have if I had that cardstock in and I did this all earlier. Before we take it off the loom, I'm going to tuck in these ends. And then here at the bottom, I'm going to take 3 strings on the far left and far right sides, and then 2 strings everywhere else. And I'm going to do an overhand knot to secure the strings. So now I'm gonna tuck in all these ends at the bottom, and then we can add a dowel. Now I'm adding the dowel at the top, so I'm just gonna take 2 strings at a time and open the loops up, flip them forward, and do an extra twist and add the dowel. Now I'm adding a simple hanging string just with the same yarn I used for the warp. And then I'm just gonna organize all the fringe really nicely and give it a trim to make sure it's at least somewhat straight. Okay, I'm gonna show you with the front camera so that you can really see that texture. Like, look how much this sticks out, and it just like really adds something to that, and I think it's so cute. If you enjoyed this tutorial, check out this one next.